Bill Maher called out CNN host Kaitlan Collins for her biased reporting. He said what many viewers have been thinking for years. We listened to her response. Let's start by pointing out the obvious. CNN has a reputation problem, and it's not just conservatives who see it. When Stephen Colbert's audience laughed at the idea of CNN being unbiased, it said a lot about how people feel. If even a liberal-leaning audience finds the idea of CNN as a neutral news source funny, how do they expect to reach across other parties? Kaitlan tries to defend CNN by saying they have both Democratic and Republican guests on their show, but she brought up how her show invites both parties. But that alone does not prove CNN's fairness. Just having guests from both sides isn't enough. What matters is how those guests are treated. If one side feels like they're being grilled while the other gets an easy ride, it's not fair journalism. Bill countered her, and this time he brought up Kamala's speech. He uses it as an example why so many people, especially conservatives, don't trust CNN. He also criticizes CNN for not treating conservatives fairly, pointing out that their panels are mostly made up of liberals.
It does look, and when you see the panel, it does look like tokenism. It's kind of like the same as The View. It's like it's almost better to have nobody there, like MSNBC, than to have this.
This comment was brutal, but accurate. Bill talked about how conservatives are not treated as equal participants. Having one conservative on a panel full of liberals doesn't create balance. If anything, it highlights the imbalance even more. It's like CNN is saying, look, we have a conservative voice, but that voice is drowned out by the others. That right there is a problem. In her response, she tries to defend CNN by pointing out the network's diversity.
And I don't think that you can say that CNN is anything but fair. I mean, look at that. We covered President Biden's exit from the race very closely, the pressure on him to get out. And I feel like I can speak with authority on this. I'm from Alabama. I'm from a very red state. I have a very conservative family, a lot of them who are Trump voters. They watch my show every night. And I think they know that they can trust me, that, we call bullshit on every side, not just whatever leaning our audience may be. And I think that's something that people actually want more of, is to hear from that. I was speaking last night. It's not like they were all Democrats. I mean, we had Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, Abby Phillip, all my amazing colleagues.
They come across
giving
that way.
Analysis.
They come across that way. In a moment like that, it was like 5-1. It always looks like 5-1. Okay.
Her defense of CNN leans heavily on the idea that having a diverse team automatically guarantees balanced reporting. Sure, she mentions her Alabama roots and conservative family, but how does that translate to CNN being fair? She also highlights figures like Dana Bash and Jake Tapper as evidence of diversity. But to many viewers, these names don't scream neutrality. They're often seen as leaning one way, particularly in moments like the one Bill Maher pointed out. She also talked about covering Biden's exit from the race. It sounds more like meeting the minimum standard of journalism rather than a proof of fairness. It's not enough to simply call out one side now and then. The issue Bill raised was about Bill pointing out the uneven reactions, like the 5-1 commentary ratio he mentioned, which is something a lot of Americans are upset about. This is a bigger issue with the media as a whole. Whether they mean to or not, when news coverage leans too much in one direction, it pushes away a large part of the audience because it becomes harder for the people to trust what they are told.
What do you think about the fact that Kamala doesn't talk to the press? In a way, I feel like it's more insulting than what Trump does. And Trump says you're the enemy of the people, which is pretty bad. What she's kind of saying is, I don't need you. I'm not talking to you. You don't matter. You're not relevant anymore. To me, that's even worse than I hate you. It's like, I don't think about you.
Bill's view is tough, but makes you think. He's not letting Trump off the hook for calling the press the enemy of the people. Instead, he's arguing that Kamala Harris ignoring the press completely might be worse. It sends the message that the media and the public aren't important enough to bother with. When leaders avoid the press, it raises suspicions. Are they afraid of being held accountable? Are they hiding something? Either way, it's a bad look. A leader's job is to be open, even when the questions are tough or uncomfortable. That's how trust is built with the public.
I don't know if it's worse than denigrating the press on a daily basis, which is what Donald Trump did. I mean, I covered him in the White House every day as a correspondent. And, oftentimes to kind of, shake you if you were asking him a question, he would try to get into a personal argument with you or just deny or lie about what you were asking about. And so I don't know if I would compare the two. I do think she should talk to the press. I think anyone who wants to have access to the nuclear codes should be willing to sit down and take questions. And we'd love to have her on the show.
I'd love to too, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
We'll see who gets her first.
Well, I think she'll do you before she does me, but oh, stop.
Kaitlan makes a fair point, saying Trump's constant attacks on the press were damaging. But her response doesn't fully address Bill's criticism of Kamala. The media is how leaders connect with the people they serve. If they avoid it, it looks like they're hiding something or think the public doesn't matter. This interview shows a growing problem between leaders and the media. Whether it's through attacking the press or staying silent, both approaches damage trust. Leaders need to step up and be willing to answer questions. Without that, it's hard for anyone to believe they have nothing to hide. What do you think of Bill Maher's take on CNN? Let us know in the comments.